All right, picture this. We're looking at one of the absolutely most dramatic, cinematic scenes in all of ancient Buddhist literature. It's chapter 15 of the Lotus Sutra, and Shakyamuni Buddha just asks his assembly a pretty critical question. Who's going to carry this teaching forward in the chaotic dark ages to come? And then suddenly, the ground literally shakes. The earth splits wide open, and pouring out from beneath the surface are these vast, uncountable numbers of bodhisattvas that nobody has ever seen before. The whole assembly is just completely stunned, and Shakyamuni simply tells them they are my students. They've been here all along. So today, we are going to dive into what that actually means. Welcome to today's explainer. We're gonna unlock this incredibly complex text and reveal how a deeply ingrained mythos in Nichiren Buddhism actually translates into a super practical map for ethical living. You know, it's so fascinating to unpack texts like this, right? Because beneath all that grand cosmic imagery lies some seriously tangible guidance that we can use today. We're going to take a close look at these bodhisattvas of the earth, separate the myth from the reality, and really figure out what an open heart looks like in action. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the shaking of the earth, then tackle the whole metaphor versus actual event debate, decode the four leaders, uncover what Nichiren's true intent was, and finally, look at what these bodhisattvas look like in completely ordinary clothes. Let's jump right in. Section 1. The shaking of the earth. So, when people believe a literal, physical army of saviors is supposed to just appear out of nowhere in a dark age, well, that can sometimes get twisted into fervor, fundamentalism, and intolerance. But notice this massive hint that Shakyamuni drops here to unlock the whole mystery. He says that all of these bodhisattvas were dwelling beneath this saha world, meaning beneath the earth. He is absolutely not talking about subterranean deities waiting in a cave somewhere. He means these are internal qualities. They're hidden aspects of our character waiting right beneath the ground of who we already are. Moving on to Section 2, Metaphor versus Actual Event. If you look throughout history, you'll see two very different ways people approach profound religious poetry. On the literal side, institutions love to concretize the poetry into actual events, real deities, and exclusive lineage claims. But the metaphorical approach? That treats a text as a set of pointers. It's doing its absolute best to describe the ineffable, hidden aspects of the human heart, giving us real, practical, ethical guidance. Now, we aren't here to say one side is completely right and the other is totally wrong. We just want to explore how the metaphorical approach transforms this ancient text into a genuinely useful psychological toolkit. All right, Section 3, Decoding the Four Leaders. So, if these aren't literal underground beings, what on earth are they? Well, the sutra tells us that this vast host of qualities is led by four primary bodhisattvas, and their names are actually straight-up descriptions of human behavior. Ancient commentators cleanly mapped these four mythical archetypes to the four divine abodes of Buddhism, basically the four orientations of an open heart. They even correspond to the four classical elements. The correspondence is so perfectly clean that it just seems obvious in hindsight. Let's break each of these down and see what they actually look like in action. First up, we have superior practice, or Jogyo, which maps perfectly to loving kindness. Its element is fire. And honestly, we all know what this feels like from the inside, right? It's that foundational warmth in your chest when you connect with another person. It's just the simple, unconditional wish that others be happy, well, and free of suffering, offered without needing any specific reason or transaction at all. Next is boundless practice, or muhen-gyo, which corresponds to compassion. Its element is wind. Compassion is that courageous movement toward suffering rather than running away from it. And notice the word boundless here. It doesn't draw artificial lines. It doesn't look at someone who is annoying or, morally complicated and say, nope, actually, that's far enough. It just keeps blowing outward. Then we've got pure practice, or Jogyo, representing sympathetic joy. Its element is water. Now, I'm not going to lie, this one is incredibly difficult. It is the capacity to be genuinely, truly glad when good things happen to other people. Think about when a colleague gets a promotion. We often have that quiet, slightly envious voice in our head. The purity they're talking about here is joy with all of that envy totally rinsed away. And finally, there's steadfast practice, or on-your-gyo, which is equanimity. Unsurprisingly, its element is earth. Now, keep in mind, equanimity isn't indifference. It's not about not caring. It is the stabilizing ground that lets the other three function without completely collapsing. Because without equanimity, our love gets needy, our compassion burns out into exhaustion, and our joy just tips over into nervous agitation. Equanimity is what maintains the balance of the whole shebang. Now, institutional tradition will often tell you that superior practice, or Jogyo, is the supreme leader of the forge just because it gets mentioned first in the text. But if you look at the generative structure here, the real reason Jogyo leads is because loving kindness is the necessary base condition that makes all the other three possible. Compassion without goodwill is just a dry obligation. Sympathetic joy without warmth, that's just performative. Loving kindness is the fuel that all the others draw from. Okay, moving to section 4, Nichiren's true intent. So over time, later institutions started claiming that the 13th century monk Nichiren was the literal reincarnation of Jogyo, or even the eternal Buddha himself. But take a look at this quote, written by Nichiren himself while he was in exile in 1273. He says, "Having taken the lead in the task, he may even be one of them." Notice the super humble conditional language here, may even be. Across hundreds of authenticated writings, he never actually made a flat-out declaration that he was Jogyo. Those absolute claims, those were built way later by followers seeking legitimacy and authority. Nichiren himself deliberately left it open. And honestly, that brings us to what we might playfully call the Fermi paradox of Nichiren Buddhism. Think about it. If we take the institutional claim literally, that Nichiren was the sole, literal incarnation of Jogyo, then where in the world are the other three? Where are boundless, pure, and steadfast practice? If the cosmic conditions were supposedly right for one to appear, shouldn't the others be somewhere in the neighborhood? Well, Nichiren seemed to wonder this too. In a really touching memorial letter for his first teacher, Dozenbo, Nichiren actually implied that Dozenbo represented steadfast practice, the earth element. And this is remarkable. Dozenbo had zero radiant cosmic credentials. He was just an obscure, kind of timid country priest who helped a young Nichiren escape danger, but was otherwise too frightened to rock the boat. He was just a kind, compromised, completely ordinary man who managed to do a brave thing. Nichiren located these grand bodhisattvas in regular people doing small, grounded acts of kindness. Which leads us perfectly into section 5, Bodhisattvas in ordinary clothes. Let's bring this grand 13th century cosmology right into your living room today. These 4 figures, they aren't actual glowing beings, they are behaviors that we can aspire to. It's the day you actually let someone merge in traffic without yelling at the windshield. It's sitting with a friend's bad news without immediately making it about yourself. It's taking pure, unselfish pleasure in a coworker's success. It's staying totally level when your teenager is pushing absolutely every button you have. Falling short of perfection isn't failing. These actions right here, they are the bodhisattva ideal itself, just walking around in ordinary clothes. And Nichiren made this visually obvious too. On the Gohanzon, which is the mandala used in Nichiren Buddhist practice, these 4 leaders are placed right at the absolute top register, next to the central focal point. That placement is not just decorative. It's literally telling us that these 4 qualities, warmth, compassion, joy for others, and a steady ground, are the entire point of the practice. They aren't some advanced attainment reserved for elite monks on a mountain. They belong at the exact center of our messy daily lives. So I want to leave you with this final, incredibly empowering question. Which of these 4 qualities is available to you right now? Can you choose a little more warmth today, or maybe just a bit more equanimity? Because the practice really isn't about achieving some permanent, mystical state of golden radiance. It is all about building new, wholesome habits, one ordinary choice at a time. And honestly, that is what changing your karma actually means. So think about which of these 4 you can bring into your life today. Until next time, keep exploring.